Adrian Vale was celebrated as the architect of tomorrow. His name glittered across magazine covers, TED-style stages, and government panels. To the world, he was the visionary urban planner who could transform broken cities into flawless systems of glass, greenery, and profit. His designs promised efficiency, safety, and elegance, cities without chaos, poverty, or wasted space. Investors adored him, politicians trusted him, the wealthy praised him as a savior of modern urban life. What the headlines never showed were the families who vanished beneath his blueprints. Adrian told himself he was improving lives. When old neighborhoods were demolished to make room for luxury towers, innovation hubs, and elite residential zones, he called it progress. When low-income communities were relocated to the outskirts of the city, far from jobs, schools, and hospitals, he called it necessary sacrifice. He never attended eviction meetings. He never walked through the streets before demolition. He studied maps, numbers, and projections, not people. His cities were perfect because they were silent. Among the communities erased by one of Adrian's most ambitious projects was Riverside Quarter, a dense, vibrant neighborhood known not for wealth but for connection. Riverside was home to street vendors, artists, immigrant families, and one of the largest deaf communities in the region. For decades, they had built a life around visual language, open courtyards for signing, wide sidewalks, community centers designed for sight lines instead of sound. It was a place where silence was not emptiness, but belonging. When Adrian's firm announced the Riverside Renewal Project, the language was polished and cold. Urban optimization, economic uplift, future-ready development. Within 6 months, eviction notices spread like wildfire. Protests erupted, but they were dismissed as emotional resistance to progress. That was when Mara Ilias stepped forward. Mara was a deaf community organizer, born and raised in Riverside. She had learned early that the world was not built for people like her. Sidewalks too narrow for visual communication, public announcements designed only for ears, meetings where decisions were made without interpreters, as if deafness meant absence. Riverside was the exception, a place shaped by necessity and care. When it was threatened, Mara did not shout, she documented. Using video, photographs, and testimonies in sign language, she began to record what Adrian's plans ignored: the elderly woman who relied on visual cues to cross streets safely, the deaf children whose school was within walking distance, the community network that functioned without sound but with deep coordination. She translated these stories into reports, not with pity but precision. She showed how Adrian's perfect city designs erased entire ways of living. At first, no one listened, until one video went viral. The video showed Riverside before demolition, children signing jokes across balconies, neighbors communicating through light signals, a community alive in motion. Then it cut to the empty land after eviction, silent not with meaning, but with loss. The caption read, "A city designed without listening." The backlash was immediate. Investors demanded explanations. Advocacy groups called for investigations. For the first time in his career, Adrian Vale was summoned not to present, but to answer. He watched the video alone in his office late at night. He told himself it was exaggerated, emotional manipulation, but something unsettled him. The silence in the final frame was different from the silence he valued. It was hollow. When a court ordered Adrian to attend a public hearing with displaced residents, he expected hostility. What he didn't expect was Mara. She did not accuse him. She did not plead. Through an interpreter, she explained his designs with terrifying clarity. She pointed to specific elements: narrow corridors, inaccessible transit hubs, and sound-dependent safety systems, and explained how they systematically excluded deaf residents. She showed that his cities were not neutral, they were biased towards those who could hear, afford, and adapt. "You did not destroy our homes by accident. You designed a world where we do not exist," she signed calmly. The words struck harder than any insult. For the first time, Adrian realized something uncomfortable. He had never truly listened, not to criticism, not to communities, not even to the cities he claimed to love. He controlled them from above, believing vision alone was enough. Public pressure mounted, contracts were suspended, Adrian's reputation cracked. The final blow came when a federal committee ruled that his firm would be required to oversee the rebuilding of Riverside, this time under strict accessibility and inclusion mandates and under community leadership. Adrian considered walking away, but something in Mara's gaze during the hearing, steady, unafraid, kept him from doing so. The rebuilding process was nothing like his previous work. Meetings were slower, interpreters were always present, designs were debated, challenged, rejected. Residents insisted on wide visual corridors, open sightlines, adaptive signaling systems, and public spaces shaped by how people actually lived, not how investors imagined they should. At first, Adrian felt stripped of authority. He was used to being obeyed, not questioned. But as weeks turned to months, something shifted. He began to observe instead of dictate. He learned that accessibility was not a limitation, but an expansion, that designing for the most marginalized created cities better for everyone. Mara worked beside him, not as an assistant, but as a partner. She taught him how silence could be expressive, how space could communicate, how control suffocated creativity. She never forgave him outright, but she allowed him to learn. One evening, standing in the rebuilt Riverside Plaza, Adrian watched as residents gathered. Children played beneath visual art installations designed to signal community events. Streetlights pulsed softly to indicate announcements. Conversations flowed in gestures, expressions, movement. The city was alive, not because it was efficient, but because it was human. Adrian finally understood the difference between designing cities and shaping lives. When Riverside reopened, Adrian declined interviews. He stepped away from celebrity panels and glossy showcases. His firm changed its structure, placing community councils at the center of every project. Investors complained. Profits slowed, but the cities flourished. In his final public statement before retreating from fame, Adrian wrote, "I once believed control created perfection. I was wrong. Cities are not meant to obey us. They are meant to listen and to teach us how." Mara watched the statement translated into sign language at the Riverside Community Center. She didn't smile, but she nodded. The city had learned to listen, and so had he.